Today we're going to take a look at the ASUS Transformer Prime and the iPad 3 from a business point of view and see how these two tablets measure up. Size-wise, you can see that the Transformer Prime is a little bit larger than the iPad 3. It's also a little bit slimmer, and I found it much more comfortable to hold in the hand. The iPad 3 is a little bit heavy and dense, whereas the ASUS, you actually just rest it quite comfortably in your palm, and the hand didn't fatigue as much. But both devices have brilliant screens, very nice resolution. The iPad 3's screen is a little brighter, a little bit sharper. And one critical difference to start with is that on the iPad 3 you can get cellular data, whereas the ASUS Transformer Prime is Wi-Fi only. So if it's important to you to have the cellular, if you don't have a device to tether to get that cellular access if you're in an area that doesn't have Wi-Fi, you may want to look at the iPad 3. So one of the most important uses for a tablet, which is perfect to take on the road, is email in business. So let's take a look at the email programs. Both of them have fairly robust email programs. We can open up on the ASUS and the iPad. We can see that there's a variety of messages in the inbox, and this is actually giving us a more accurate view right now, because I've actually cleaned up my email and it's showing accurately the 4, where because this had loaded these messages in the past, even though they've been deleted from the server, they're showing here. So if I go back to BizZone and then come back in again, it's going to say checking for mail, but it's not going to get rid of those. So that's one thing I found a little frustrating about the iPad 3. Both, though, are pretty easy to use. You can come in right here and clear off the junk mail on the ASUS with a few clicks and hitting the delete button. Something I don't particularly like about the iPad is that unless I slide to delete, which is time consuming, if I hit edit and select all of these messages to delete, I'm actually loading them as I select them. So as I click on the Hummingbird Vine junk mail that I want to delete, you can see it's actually loading over on the right-hand side. That concerns me from a possible vulnerability point of view. If someone finds a way to manipulate a virus through the preview pane, it's commonly thought that if you open junk mail, that the junk mail sender is tracking that information and is then going to send you the spam in an increasing volume. So it concerns me a little bit that I'm going to have more spam as a result of that. One thing I particularly like about the iPad 3 is the ability just to slide the inbox off and on the screen, whereas with the Android, you would have to open up the article and then go back to your inbox. But really, both of them are very usable. I do give the Transformer extra marks for the ability to actually show the real email that's on the server, whereas the iPad, I suppose if you wanted to download messages and browse them when they'd been deleted off the server, that could be a bit of an advantage. So another important aspect of using a tablet for business is going to be the calendaring feature. Let's take a look at how the two default apps compare. So I can open up the calendar on the Apple and on the ASUS, and you're going to see here, if I go to the day view on both devices, that this is a much more robust functional layout on the iPad 3. So if I take a look at the Transformer Prime and I take a look at the different days of the week, I'm only seeing part of the day at once, and it's really not easy to follow. Whereas on the iPad 3, we've got a nice summary here. And also we can of course switch on both devices into week mode and into month mode. But again, the iPad 3 just has such a better presentation, and a feature I like is that you can actually really quickly change months by dragging the icon down here. You can go into the year mode on the iPad 3, which you cannot do on the ASUS Transformer Prime. The ASUS Transformer Prime does have an agenda, which can give you ideas of things that you need to do. But again, I just find that it's so much more functional over on the iPad. And both of them make it really easy to add events and to invite people to events. Now, there are additional calendars that you can get for the Transformer Prime. A popular one is this business calendar, which has free and paid versions. But compared again to the iPad, it just does not measure up. And so I can go in, I can switch different views. It's a little bit tricky to use. So to do that, it wasn't clear at all at first. I've got this context menu that now lets me change to different options. So I can take a look at my agenda and I can take a look at the week view. So I can move around. Compared to the iPad 3, the ASUS does not have nearly as nice or functional a layout. One of the nice things about the Transformer Prime is that if you use Google Calendar, it's automatically going to connect and do that synchronization as soon as you log into your Google account. And you can set up, it's actually fairly easy on the iPad under the settings, but what's a little bit strange is that you actually put in your calendar as a Microsoft Exchange account, which seemed counterintuitive. Without reading an FAQ online, we probably wouldn't have known how to sync our Google Calendar with the iPad 3. Document management is an extremely important part of using a tablet for business. So let's take a look at this particular email that I had sent to myself that contains an attachment of a Word document. Now we can see that the attachment is on the screen here in the iPad. I have to click on the Attachment tab in the ASUS Transformer, and then I can load that particular document. Now the display is actually a little bit nicer on the iPad, but what is particularly important, I'll hit View now, is that I can do editing on the Transformer Prime. So you can see that I can switch into edit mode, and I can now go in and change this. So I've made a little comment, add text here, and then I can go ahead and I can save that document, or I can save it as a new document. So this is a really important difference between these two devices, the fact that the ability to edit Microsoft Word documents is built right into the ASUS Transformer Prime, whereas it displays beautifully on the iPad, but I don't get that edit functionality. So this is one standout feature for me that pushes the ASUS Transformer Prime ahead of the iPad 3. We need to look at the apps that we can use to extend the business functionality of these devices, and the Android is really catching up to the iPad. Not long ago you would have found more specialized business type apps built for the iPad specifically, whereas with the Android you might have been trying to retrofit a smartphone app onto the device. But there's a number of products that you can use, for example Dropbox. You could actually have one staff member have an iPad 3 and another have the Android, and both would work well together. So on the Android, I'm just going to go ahead and open up this Dropbox Quick Start document. You can see these are both PDF documents, display nicely on both devices. And the way that Dropbox works is that you basically install this on the laptop or desktop computer in the office, and you can upload files to a shared server space, and then you can access those files from either tablet on the road. So that's a handy way to share files. The ASUS also, when you sign up, has an automatic login to an ASUS file storage sharing program, which is what the Polaris naturally connects to as well. And you've of course got the iCloud with the iPad 3. Another useful feature on the device is Fuse Meeting. So that is available both on the iPad 3 and on the Android now. There's a variety of apps you can use for creative collaboration. For example, we've got Photoshop Touch installed on this iPad. So let's just turn that around, and it's really easy to make a new document, to pull pictures in from the camera roll. Here's an HP printer that we were reviewing, and then to start manipulating that picture. There's lots of settings that you can adjust. Do you want to increase the saturation? Do you want to quickly edit that photo so that you can adjust the color? If the white balance is off, maybe make that a little bit more blue. So it's really quite simple to use. It's quite a nice program, the Photoshop Touch app on the iPad 3 and on the Android. The apps are great. Let's take a look now at actually typing in on these devices. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open the notes on the iPad 3 and Super Note on the Droid, and we're just going to go ahead and make a new note. So we'll hit Create New Page on the ASUS. Now in the Super Note, we've got to switch into keyboard mode. I do find that the responsiveness with the capitalization isn't as good on the ASUS, so you have to pay attention, whereas on the iPad, it's a little bit smarter about knowing when to turn capitalization on and off. So the keyboard on the iPad 3 is a little lighter, a little more responsive. I prefer it to the ASUS. One thing the ASUS has, however, that's an amazing feature that's not available on the iPad 3 is something called slide typing. So over on the iPad, if I wanted to type in a sentence, I've got to go through the usual steps of typing the letters key by key. But over on the Transformer Prime, I can do something really neat. I can actually use slide typing. So I'm just going to put my finger on the start of the letter that I want, and I'm going to drag. So by lifting my finger, this device knows that it's now time for a space. So now I'm going to go H-O-W-A-R-E-Y-O-U, and then I'm going to have to switch in and throw in my question mark. So you'll notice that just with a few quick slides, I've been able to type in that sentence. And it takes a little bit of getting used to it first, but it's actually remarkable how fast you can pick up the ability to slide type. And once I've started slide typing, I much prefer it to the regular typing. Now let's say you want to dictate rather than actually type in text. How do you do that? Well, both devices offer this option. I like what ASUS does a little bit more. So you see down here there's a small keyboard button on the screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and click the keyboard button, and then we're going to click the third option here, which is to go into Google Voice Typing. Now we can see how well the ASUS Transformer handles dictation. So we can see it made some mistakes. Let's click Done. So you'd obviously have to go in and fix that up. Over on the iPad 3, you cannot dictate directly in the note view. Instead, what you would do is you would install an app called Dragon Dictation, and it's free. And then when Dragon Dictation opens, you're going to basically click Record. Let's see how well Dragon Dictation handles errors compared to the ASUS. Tap the screen to stop. Not very well. We've got, let's see how well Dragon Dictation handles errors catenaces, some word that doesn't exist. So what I found is that from a functional standpoint, neither of these devices is actually at the point where you're going to be able to dictate off long documents without having to do a number of corrections. And both, of course, there was no voice training. This was just right out of the box how the behavior is working for each device. So over on the iPad 3, we're basically going to have to come up here, and then we can email it, we can cut it, we can copy it, post it to Facebook or Twitter. So we can select that all and we'll say copy. Then we'll go back over to the note program, click on the screen, and then double tap. And that's going to give us our paste option, so we've copied that in. So we're adding an extra step if we use the dictation on the iPad 3 compared to the Transformer Prime. A couple little differences between the two. You can use gestures like using all four fingers on the iPad 3 to drag up and to view programs that are open, whereas on the Transformer Prime, you would do that by simply clicking the Apps button. And it's very, very easy on the Transformer Prime to go ahead and close off a lot of these different documents that are open, whereas on the iPad, it works like the iPhone. You would need to hold down a button and then click on that button in order to close programs. Something I really like on the iPad that you're not going to get on the Transformer is this gesture. You can just pinch the screen and close your app. It's not actually fully closed, but those gestures are really nice. I can also use all four fingers to go between different apps that are open. I find it's a little bit finicky, but once you get used to it, it's not bad at all. So some of those gestures are nice on the iPad 3 that you don't get on the Transformer Prime. And I think I actually prefer this ability to just quickly open and close apps on the Transformer Prime. Both the iPad and the ASUS have excellent cameras for a tablet, and they both have front and back facing options, 1080p video. So let's just take a look at the ASUS camera first. So we're going to take a look at taking a photo of this mug. So we'll turn it on its side, and you'll see that we actually have quite a number of adjustment options. I can click on the settings. I can turn the flash to on, off, or auto mode. So we'll put our flash on. I can adjust the white balance, so I can say that it's daylight, doesn't work particularly well. Incandescent, that's a little bit yellow. Fluorescent, that's starting to get better to what we're actually in the room, but we're going to keep it on auto, which does a pretty good job. Then there's the exposure, so we can darken that up a little bit. We can brighten it up quite a bit. We've got quite a bit of play here on the exposure. And we can also say what type of scene it is. Is it an indoor scene? And so we can adjust and have the camera adjust for the type of scene. When we're done, we just click this arrow button and we take the picture. Now with the flash off, we would see quite a different result that would be closer to what we saw on the screen. And taking video is also pretty easy, so we would just go from the camera mode to the video mode, and something kind of neat is we can also put things into panoramic mode. So we've got a lot of choices on the ASUS device. Now let's take a look at the iPad. Similarly, we open up our camera, and one of the differences, you don't have nearly the controls that you have with the ASUS. You also don't have the flash. But what you can do is if you want to adjust the exposure, you just click on the object and it's going to adjust for that object. So if I click over here where it's a little brighter, it's going to adjust the brightness accordingly. If I click on the spoon where there's that little bit of white light, again, it's going to come in and adjust the exposure. And also, you should add that both of these cameras are extremely good at getting right close up to an object and then taking a photo. One thing you're going to find that's a little bit better on the iPad than the ASUS is when you're taking video on the iPad, if you hand hold it, there's an automatic stabilizer built in, so you lose a little bit of that shake. Ideally, if you're shooting video, professional video, you're going to want to make sure that the video is completely stabilized, and the way to do that is with a tripod. The performance in terms of processing power on both of these devices is fantastic. And we're just reaching with these two devices the point where the tablet can really become a contender to replace that laptop. The one barrier that still exists is the storage and some of the connectivity to different software programs, that the apps are still a little bit lightweight. So, for example, comparing Photoshop on a desktop computer to Photoshop Touch, the desktop computer is a substantive program that has a lot of powerful features. The tablet version, while it's excellent, it doesn't yet replace the desktop option. Another feature that we really like about the ASUS Transformer Prime is the micro SD card, so that we can expand the memory capabilities. That's one drawback with the iPad 3, and especially as we start seeing videos and more data storage going right onto the device and lots of apps on the device, having adequate data storage is going to be very important. The final thing we're going to look at is the internet browsing on both devices. Essentially, they're both excellent. The iPad 3 has a little bit more vibrancy to the display, so we pulled up the Canada One website. You'll notice that you can see a little bit more on the Canada One website, a little bit more of the front page, whereas it's cut off just above the featured videos on the iPad 3. But you'll also notice like the read, write, ask, find buttons are a little more vibrant, the color's a little bit richer, and that is because the iPad 3 really does have a standout screen. So, of course, when you use the internet, most of the functionality is going to be pretty good. You'll notice that the iPad 3 is a little bit smoother in how it moves the page, so it's just a little bit lighter to the touch. And of course, one drawback with the tablets is that when you have a standard drop-down menu that was built for the standard laptop desktop, it's not necessarily going to work very well. So some of the JavaScript functions and specialized functions don't work that well in a web browser on either of these tablets. So for example, I was trying to use the webmail program before I had my email installed, and it just would not let me view emails or delete emails, so I was finding that very frustrating. Overall, both have beautiful, vibrant displays. Video plays beautifully on both devices. We do like the fact that there's HDMI out built into the ASUS Transformer Prime. With the iPad 3, you're going to have to pay $30, $50, something like that, to get a converter that will allow you to do the HDMI out. And of course, one other feature that the ASUS Transformer Prime has is that for an extra $149, you can buy a docking station, and then you can connect the keyboard and mouse and USB devices to your Transformer Prime. So to recap, on the iPad 3, what we liked: the display, the calendar feature, some of the gestures, and also the fact that some of the apps are a little bit more developed. On the ASUS tablet, we liked the slide typing. We liked some of the navigation and ease of use in terms of things like closing up the apps. And we really liked the fact that we could edit documents natively right from our email program with no extra apps required. From a business standpoint, the ASUS Transformer Prime slightly edges out the iPad 3 due to its native ability to edit incoming documents, slide typing, and optional docking keyboard and mouse. However, if rumors that Microsoft plans to release an Office app for the iPad are true, then the iPad's built-in cellular connection and some of its nicer features, like its beautiful business calendar, would balance out the score. Really, you can't go wrong with either one of these tablets.